All right. Thank you, Dr. Livingston. You guys can hear me on this, right? Okay. So first off, we're going to start off with a little history. So since the industrialization of agriculture, people have migrated from farm towns into cities. And as years go on, more people leave these farm towns in pursuit of the cities. And this leaves less than 2% of the U.S. population to tend to growing raw materials that eventually become the produce and products we put into our bodies. The UN projects that between 2010 and 2025, there will be a 1 billion increase in the urban population and a decrease in farming populations. Living in these cities has disconnected us from agriculture and where our food comes from. It wasn't until I went to college that I even thought about this. And I still walk into markets today expecting to see a spread like this year-round without thinking about the seasonalities that comes with fruits and vegetables and how far food travels to get to one plate. But there is a sort of, you could say, revolution brewing in which more and more consumers want to know where their food comes from. So the Center of Food Integrity is a nonprofit organization that works with industry as well as universities in conducting studies on consumerism. Their mission is to help today's food system gain consumer trust. So last year they asked consumers, do you trust today's food system? Only 25% strongly trusted today's food system, almost a 10% drop from the previous year. You can see that there are 14% of people that completely do not trust today's food system, leaving a large 61% unsure. So where is this disconnect coming from? Well, the Center of Food Integrity sent out a survey and asked consumers who they found responsible to entrust safe food and who they actually trusted to entrust safe food. They gave them 11 different categories to rank and received about 1,000 responses back. The categories they were asked to look at were dietitians, family members, family doctors, farmers, state regulators, federal regulators, food companies, grocery stores, nutrition advocacy groups, restaurants, as well as university scientists. And what they found was that consumers hold federal regulatory agencies, food companies, and farmers most responsible to ensure safe food. The disconnect comes from the trust. You can see that federal regulatory agencies and food companies are at the bottom of the list. So when you're basically responsible for something but not trusted, this is where complications can come in, and I'll go over that soon. You can see that farmers maintain their status in regards to being responsible and trusted. So this is because most people hold a positive impression of agriculture versus food manufacturing. Nearly 2 out of 3 people hold a positive impression of agriculture versus just under half with food manufacturing. So as a university, you're probably wondering where we rank on this list. Well, consumers don't necessarily find us responsible to ensure food safety. There is neither strong trust nor distrust in us to ensure it. And if we break down trust, you can see that there are 36% of consumers who strongly trust us to ensure safe food, 13% that do not trust us, and 51% that fall in between that spectrum. So as someone that is more trusted and not held as responsible, we do have a possibility to influence the public. And as a university, we should be getting in on this conversation because we work with the government, we work with industry, and we work with the public through extension. We can be this middle ground that brings these 3 entities together and create a conversation, start discussions, educate, as well as foster trust. So I know I'm talking about trust a lot. So why is trust so important? Well, with trust comes this thing called a social license. And a social license is the privilege, no matter what kind of entity you are, it's the privilege to be able to operate with minimal formal restrictions based on maintaining public trust. And public trust comes from the belief that your actions are consistent with social expectations as well as the values of your stakeholders. So there is a price to losing a social license. And at the cost of losing a social license, there will be an increase in regulation and oversight, which leads to increases in operating costs. There will be a decrease in consumer confidence as well as reputation that leads to decreases in assets, sales, and stock prices. So with the loss of social license comes more social control, which is more rigid, bureaucratic, and comes at a higher cost. So the Center for Food Integrity partnered up with Iowa State University to see what drives trust and how do you get people to trust you. They conducted over 20 different studies and came up with the trust model I'm about to show you. So just to reiterate, in order to have freedom to operate, you need a social license, and that social license has to be backed up by public trust. There are three common drivers to building trust, the first of which is the role of influential others. These are the people that consumers find most relatable to them. So historically, this has been family members and friends, but with the role of today's increasing media and social medias, public figures as well as celebrities also fall into that realm. Next, you have competence. This is our expertise. This is where science and technical knowledge come in, as well as credibility. The final driver of trust, which is one that is most often ignored, is confidence. And with confidence, it has to be backed up with shared values and ethics. So we can kind of condense this model down and combine confidence and influential others into shared values. And competence can be seen as facts. And to look deeper into this model, the next question is, what is the stronger driver of trust? So the Center for Food Integrity surveyed over 6,000 consumers over the span of 3 years and found that shared values overweigh facts. In fact, shared values are 3 to 5 times more important to building trust than the use of just facts. So does that mean that we abandon science? No, not at all. But you need that to remain credible. But to start a conversation and to build trust, you need to start with shared values. The Center for Food Integrity also looked into ethnographic research in which they dove into the internet to research people's relationship to trust and food. They looked at 80,000 data points of content and conversations over 8 modes of social media and came up with the 5 different kinds of consumers. They had a group of social scientists come in and analyze 4,100 profiles of Americans between ages 18 and 64 to help build these archetypes. They had a second group of scientists come in and analyze a whole new 4,400 different kinds of profiles to verify their initial findings. And again, they looked at over 8 different modes of social media and followed these profiles from 1 to 2 years of engagement. And what they came up with is this truth spectrum. So on the very left of the truth spectrum are people whose relationship to truth is objective and grounded in science, in evidence-based science. On the very right, you have people whose truths coincide with their desires and belief. And of course, you have people in the middle whose truths are both objective and subjective. So on the very left of the spectrum, you have the scientific consumer. These are people whose relationship to truth, again, is grounded in evidence-based science. So in relationship to us, when we read news and find out that the p-value is less than 0.05, then that's when things are significant. And so the next category is the philosopher. These are people who are more rationally grounded, but they look at things through moral and ethical lenses. In the middle, you have the follower. These are the majority of consumers that are confused and anxious about contradictory food news that they find today. Next, you have the wishful thinker. These are the people that generally have a positive outview on today's food system. And these are generally the types of people that follow food trends and post a lot on social media. And finally, on the very end of the spectrum is the existentialist. These are people whose relationship to truth has to coincide with their desires and beliefs. Should anything counter that, they are prone to feel immediately defensive and attacked. So how do we as scientists on the very end of one spectrum communicate to the rest of these people? Well, since we are science-based folks, I'm going to show you through facts. So the first thing we can look at is how consumers research food-related issues. The four most common modes of research are using search engines, specific websites, local news, and referring to family members and friends. We refer to family members and friends because they are in the role of influential others and generally have shared values and concerns. Next, you have people between the ages of 65 and 55 looking to local TV, local news as a source for information. And the majority of consumers use search engines and specific websites to research their food, specifically moms, millennials, and foodies. And the top three most searched for food-related issues are ingredients in food, food in relationship to health, and food safety. 35% of consumers say that what they find online strongly shapes their opinions. So it is to our advantage to use social media to communicate with the public. The Nielsen Marketing Study Group found that people want to have a more personal connection when they gather research. And this can be done through storytelling. We are surrounded by stories every day, from the conversations we have with our colleagues to things that we don't even realize, like the advertisements that we're surrounded by. Robin Dunbar, an evolutionary psychologist, found that 65% of all public conversations consist of social topics as well as gossip. So if you can get people to start talking about these food issues, it'll likely spread. In addition, the Social Science Research Network found that 65% of individuals are visual learners, so we can use pictures and videos to our advantage in helping us educate and teach the public. 3M also found that we process images 60,000 times faster than we do text, so we can literally paint a picture for our audience with a picture. Again, I believe that we can use social media to our advantage and attach things like pictures, infographics, as well as videos that will create a thumbnail when posted, and these images will more likely get consumers in the public to click on them and learn about what we're trying to put out there. The use of hashtags as well as getting on trending will help us broaden our reach. So then we can have a conversation with the consumers about what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So now that we have the tools on how to engage with our audience, we have to remember to start with shared values. So we can start with talking about topics such as impact of food on health, food safety, the impact of food on the environment, labor and human rights, the treatment of animals for food, and business ethics in food production. Okay, so I'm going to break this up a little bit because even though I'm hosting this seminar on how to bridge the knowledge gap, it by no means that I'm an expert in this. We all make mistakes and there are things to learn from. So this is an article that I posted last year on my Facebook about how cage-free hens don't necessarily improve egg food safety or nutrition levels. This was taken from Food Safety News, and I just reposted this article to put it out there and let people click on it themselves and read about it. Well, there was an interesting thread that came off of this article. So before I go into this, just keep in mind that this is Facebook, okay? Okay, so my friend Morgan stated that cage-free hens is supposed to improve the birds' lives, to which I very logically answered that it is not necessarily the case. Well, she went on to ask about beak trimming and why I'd rather fit more birds in one cage than not. And you can see that I gave her a very extensive answer. I explained beak trimming to her, and I went into, in regards to putting more birds in one cage, I brought up Prop 2 and how when Prop 2 was passed in California, if you guys aren't familiar with that, it basically gave birds more space, laying birds more space. There was a 3-month period in which egg prices rose by 2 or 3 times the normal price. And as a college student, for those 2 or 3 months, I couldn't afford eggs. And this is a problem because eggs as a whole protein source should be affordable for everyone, especially low-income consumers that have families. So that's the argument that I made. So then she asked me whether I've been to one of these farms before, which I have. And then I just throw it out there that I'm getting my master's in poultry science. And you can see how she totally disregarded everything that I said. So, the beauty of living in America is there is freedom of speech, and we can agree to disagree on these topics. I believe that the option of cage-free and organic and all of this stuff is a luxury. But there is something that went wrong in my answer, and let's see if you guys can find where it went wrong. I'll give you guys a second. And just point it out when you do. So this part, right? Not just what I feel is right. This is pretty much the exact opposite of what I've been telling you guys today. So we do make mistakes, and we can learn from it. Morgan didn't take that response so well. And the good thing about Facebook is that you have friends that chime in. So in relationship to this truth spectrum, I believe these friends were probably in the philosopher category. Minus Ivan, he might be in the more scientific than philosopher, but Yvonne, I mean. But I have made some positive impact on people who are not familiar with the industry, as well as people in the follower categories, in which I gave them more insight to the laying operations. So the reason why I think Morgan and I didn't have such a good conversation was because we are two people on different ends of the truth spectrum. And had I started with her concerns instead of just answering and putting out what I thought was right, we might have had a more productive conversation. But there is another reality in which you can't change everyone's minds. And the thing is, that doesn't mean that you should not try or put yourself out there. So why did I just show you that? Well, it wasn't to embarrass myself. There was a reason. I believe that there are some hot topics today that the university can engage in with the public. So hot topics like this. So who is familiar with these birds? Who knows who these birds are? Just one person? They're foster farm chickens. So in the 90s and early 2000s, Foster Farms ran an ad where these two characters that are dirty hormone-injected chickens are trying to infiltrate foster farms and impersonate their non-hormone injected chickens. And I'm pretty sure it's because of this ad that spread the rumor that all chickens are injected with hormones, when in fact it is a very illegal thing to do here in America. Next, we have the issue of caged and cage-free hens, which we went over earlier. How many people have heard of the gluten-free diet? It's a pretty popular diet that's going on, and it has led some companies, I think, to unnecessarily slap gluten-free labels on products that don't need to have that. And the other topic is cured versus uncured bacon. Consumers believe that when they buy uncured bacon, it means that there are no nitrites in it. Well, to have this pink coloration that we're all familiar with when we see bacon, you need nitrites. So if you turn this box around and look at the ingredient list, there's this ingredient called celery salt. Celery naturally contains nitrites in it, but instead of using laboratory-created nitrites and using celery salt in place of that, it still gives you the characteristics of bacon. You're still using nitrite, however, it is more label-friendly to the consumer. And in my opinion, it's a little deceptive because they believe that they're getting a nitrite-free product by buying this. And the most recent issue that I came upon was McDonald's and their plan to sell only humanely raised and slaughtered chickens by 2024. So this was taken directly from their website, and down here they stated that they want to change over 70% of their global chicken supply to be fully implemented with an 8-step program by 2024. So they basically want to improve farm-level welfare outcomes, increase innovative on-farm animal health and welfare monitoring technologies, increase natural behaviors in chickens, conduct commercial trials on production inputs, change their stunning, increase accountability, have feasibility studies, as well as create sustainability councils on chicken. I honestly don't have a problem with most of this plan. The issue that I see here is switching from electrical stunning to controlled atmospheric stunning. And in 2013, the National Chicken Council posted an article on the humaneness of electrical stunning versus gas stunning. So under humaneness, they state that electrical stunning has been considered to be humane because it protects the bird from pain at the time of slaughter. Research has showed that electrical stunning, as practiced in the U.S., renders the birds insensible to pain. When you go on to gas stunning, it is stated that there has been considerable debate over the desirability of different gases and mixture of gases, even among advocates of gas stunning. Gas systems have to be selected and operated very carefully to avoid undesirable experiences. There's a section in Response of Companies to Gas Stunning in which McDonald's Corporation conducted a detailed study of the issue and noted, among other things, that unresolved issues remain for both principal gas mixture types, including the possibilities that the birds may experience pain or distress before insensibility is achieved. So why is McDonald's switching to controlled atmospheric stunning when they stated that the birds may experience this pain and distress? And I believe they're doing this because they're giving into consumer demands. And there are other arguments as to the switch from electric stunning to controlled atmospheric stunning. And the three most common arguments are that when birds come into a harvesting facility, they come in at different sizes. And so the bigger birds don't necessarily get stunned properly like the smaller birds. The second argument is that controlled atmospheric stunning is more humane than electrical stunning. And the third argument is that with controlled atmospheric stunning, there is less stress to the bird and less damage to carcasses. So I do see validity in the first argument, but I do have some trouble with the other two. So this is a controlled atmospheric stunning chamber. Birds are loaded into this chamber and the door is closed, and this space is filled with inert gases. When oxygen is depleted from birds, they reach a state of hypoxia. And the NCBI stated in their study that when birds reach a state of hypoxia, there is wing flapping as well as convulsions. So when you're in an enclosed space with metal walls and you're flapping your wings, there is chance for damage on the carcass. So I believe that This is where McDonald's could have had a conversation with the public or stood their ground before they made these million-dollar changes. I believe that, and this might not be popular opinion, but I don't believe that the customer is always right. I think that the customers know what they want. I think the customers mean well, but they don't always know what's best. And if we are truly concerned about animal welfare, we shouldn't be giving in to consumer demands. We should, in some cases, stand our ground and explain what we do and have a conversation with your consumers and explain why you're doing what you're doing. So there are some companies that are starting to do that. An example here is of Sanderson Farm and how they're not giving into gimmicks.
Old McGimmick had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, with some mumbo jumbo here and a marketing gimmick there. Here a gimmick, there a gimmick. Now who thinks chickens need a shrink? E-I-E-I, no. Now what do we have here? That's more like it. But on this farm we've got the facts, E-I-E-I-O. And on our farm we take great care, E-I-E-I-O. With some common sense here and some hearty food there. Here a chicken, there a chicken, everywhere a happy chicken, E-I-E-I-O. E-I-E-I-O. That's Sanderson Farms. Good, honest chicken.
So why am I talking about this today instead of presenting my research? Well, this is kind of a personal passion of mine because, as most of you know, I am from the city. I'm from one of these cities where we don't have programs like FFA or 4-H to teach us to appreciate where our food comes from. And sure, eventually I did go to college and gain some perspective, but that also took some time. Like Dr. Livingston said earlier, I went into college wanting to train exotic birds. And it wasn't until I took a required meat science class and met this gang of hooligans that my entire outlook on food changed and my career path took a sharp right turn. So this is why I believe the university has the power to influence people. We are scientists, but we are also people. And we are people that feel and have values, and we care about the work that we put out there, and we care about how it affects people, industry, as well as the environment. And even though I said earlier that the consumer isn't always right, the consumer eventually gets what they want. And I believe as an educational facility, we should help consumers by equipping them with the right knowledge and information to help them make these decisions with educated choices, with, I just written that, with make these educated decisions on these issues that they care so deeply about. So, thank you.